for in healthcare in particular, I think it hits a chord with us that loneliness, social isolation, this feeling of being detached and disconnected. We have a hugely high suicide rate. We have a huge rate of burnout. And how many people really understand us? How many of us marry doctors or nurses because no one else seems to understand us? And is that because we just haven't codified how we connect, and our institutions haven't helped us do this? And you say that companies may be the future to help us do this. And what are your thoughts on this? I mean, I thought it was fascinating.
Well, you know, I think loneliness is an incredibly important issue now. I mean, people think, hey, we're incredibly connected by technology. Everyone's on Facebook, and, you know, people are, you know, connected via Twitter.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I'm going to look at my comments right now. Right?
Yeah, but you know, we have so many means of connecting through technology, and I think there has been an assumption sometimes that those connections can substitute for offline connections.
Right.
And the bottom line is they can, and if you look at the data, what you see is that loneliness has actually been increasing at a time when technology to connect has also been increasing.
With the so-called iGen, this younger generation that's coming into their teens now, we did a show on the disconnection. They have incredibly high rates of depression, anxiety, suicide, but they're having sex later. They're drinking alcohol less. All these things that you and I, our parents would have been like, hey, Babu, don't. I'm so happy you're not doing anything, right? But you're at home on the device.
Yeah.
So please, I'll let you finish your thought. I interrupted you.
Yeah, so you know, the thing about loneliness is that we have, there are a couple of things that have been problematic about loneliness in addition to the fact that it's been growing. Number one is we haven't really understood how impactful it is on our health. But we know that when you look at the data, that there is actually a strong association that you see between people who are lonely and actually mortality rates. So it turns out that the lifespan of people who are lonely tends to be shorter, and not shorter by a couple of days or a couple of weeks. It tends to be shorter on the same order that smoking shortens your lifespan, and in fact even greater than the reduction in lifespan that you see with obesity. So there is something happening here, but there's also a clear correlation that you see between loneliness and anxiety and depression and dementia. And you can rightly ask the question, is this correlation? Is it causation? Like what's actually going on? Here? And you know, I think this is where we actually need to do more in-depth research in understanding loneliness. But if you delve into the biology of loneliness, there's reason to believe that there are causative mechanisms at work. And if you look historically, you know, we did evolve to be social beings. You know, thousands of years ago, if you had a network of trusted people around you, you were more likely to have a stable food supply. You were more likely to be protected from predators at night. And over thousands of years, that need for social connection, trusted social connection, became baked into our nervous systems. Now, this doesn't mean that we're all extroverts. Absolutely not.
Not at all.
To the contrary, there are many people, myself included, who tend toward the introvert side, you know, of the introvert-extrovert scale. But all of us, whether we're introverts or extroverts, need some degree of trusted social connection. We may not need 1,000 friends, but we might need just one.
Right.
You know? And this is the other point, is that loneliness is not dictated by the number of friends you have. You know, you could have thousands of people you consider friends.
I have 650,000 friends, okay, buddy? And believe me, I'm the loneliest person on earth, so.
Well, that's what I'm here, is to hang out with you.
Thank you. I just need one introvert to hang out with, right?
Yeah, but you know, one of the reasons I think that loneliness is also hard to talk about, in addition to the fact that we don't recognize the incredible impact it has on health and on productivity, is that there's actually a stigma around loneliness as well. If you tell somebody you are lonely, what that means...
Loser.
Some people will interpret it that you're a loser. Some people interpret it that you're an outcast. What it is essentially saying is, I'm not worthy of being loved. That's what it's saying. And I say this from a very personal place, because as a child I was very lonely. When I was in elementary school in particular. I was very close to my mom and dad, and still am. I was very close to my sister, and still am. I always knew that they were there for me. Their love was unconditional, and I knew that. But outside of that family, I didn't have many friends in school because I was very shy, and it was hard for me to kind of reach out. And I felt lonely. The thing is, I have not to this day told my parents about this because I felt ashamed. I felt that meant that there was something wrong with me. And there are many people who feel like that. And I want people to know that if you are lonely, you are certainly not the only one. There are many people out there who are feeling lonely. And if you aren't feeling lonely, there are likely people around you who are. And this is where I think we all have to think about the role that we could play in addressing loneliness. Because again, it has impacts on our health, It has impacts on our productivity in the workplace. It impacts educational performance in schools. But here's the thing, you don't need a medical degree or a nursing degree to address loneliness. What you need is a willingness to listen. You need a heart full of compassion, the willingness to give and receive love. These are basic human tenets that all of us have. And so this antidote to loneliness actually lies within each of us.
You said something, and that, I feel you on every level. I remember being incredibly lonely in elementary school. And when you have immigrant parents, it's exactly that. You don't go to them and say, I'm lonely. You just say, oh, I'm fine, and you play your Atari, and you do that thing. And it actually took me years to get to the sense where I was more than superficially connected. And to this day, I really only have a handful of really deep friends that unfortunately are disparate geographically. But when we get together, it's instant, the reconnection. And it's true, you don't need, and your family, you don't need a lot more, but you need some basic level of stability and love and someone that you can trust unconditionally and that kind of thing. And there was something else you said in the article. One of the antidotes to loneliness is you go as the lonely person and help somebody else. So you're at work and you support somebody, or you go out of your way to help somebody, and that in itself can form a connection that can ameliorate the loneliness.
Yeah, this is one of the counterintuitive things about loneliness. Loneliness is actually a stress state, and when you are stressed, you tend to turn inward.
For sure.
And so the instinct that people who are chronically lonely have is to actually isolate themselves even further.
Right.
But if you can push yourself a bit to reach out and to actually help someone else, that actually is a mutually reaffirming experience. It not only helps the other person, and it allows them to see that there are others who care for them, and allows them to feel valued, but it also re-engages you with another person in a meaningful way and reaffirms to you that you have value to give to others. So helping others is a very powerful antidote to loneliness. The other thing that's really important, though, is protecting quality time with family and friends. Now, we live in a culture where work has seeped into our evenings and our weekends and our vacation time.
What time is it, Tom?
It's work time. It's work o'clock.
It's work o'clock.
Case in point. But we also have had devices pervade every aspect of our life. Many.
You're just describing us.
You shut your mouth, Vivek Murthy, former 19th U.S. Surgeon General. You don't tell me about my phone.
Well, here's the thing. It's okay to use your phone to some extent, but I think if we ask ourselves honestly the question, is our phone too prevalent in our lives? Is it distracting us from conversations with people that we want to really be present with? For many of us, the answer is yes. And the answer has been yes for me too. I came to realize that I was bringing my phone to the dining table, and checking messages, like when I was dining with loved ones, which
Did Alice yell at you? Because my wife yells at me constantly.
Well, she reminds me in her gentle and thoughtful way, she often does, that's not how we want to live our lives. There was a moment, just to be very open with you, when we were putting our son to bed, and sometimes he likes Alice to feed him. Alice is my wife, and sometimes he likes me to feed him. And one day when he wanted her to feed him, she was feeding him, and I was just kind of sitting there watching them, and I just almost unconsciously just took out my phone and I was checking my email because I was just sitting there. And she put up her hand from him and she said, "Do you really need to do that now? Or do you just want to be fully present for his bedtime?" And I was like, oh my God, you're absolutely right. This is sacred time. And so I think it's important for us to draw boundaries in our life for where we are focused entirely on the people that we want to engage with, where we take technology out of the room, where we put our phones away. Even you might think to yourself, this is where phones can be really insidious. You might just put your phone 5 feet away from you on a dining table, like when you're having a meal with a friend, and say, you know what, no, don't worry, I'm fully focused. But part of your mind is looking to see if that phone lights up. If it does light up, or if it buzzes, you're thinking, who texted me?
Get out of my head, Vivek Murthy. Get out of my head. That's exactly what I do.
Well, it's what all of us do.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think creating a really dedicated space, even if it's 10 minutes in a given day, where you are fully present with somebody, this is really important to building those meaningful relationships and a part, I think, of addressing the larger crisis we have with loneliness.